Welcome to AM. My name's Richard Conway, and this is the platform for age group multisport athletes to showcase their journeys. Welcome along to episode 25. Thank you for joining us, and hope you're all well and your training's going well, and hopefully you've got some races planned that as soon as we're out of lockdown are going to take place. On this episode we've got the third and final part with TriTenacious strength and conditioning coach Dave Cripps. Dave discusses how much time we need to put into our strength and conditioning, and I think you'll find, and probably be surprised as I was, it's not as much as you think, and what that entails, and also how strength and conditioning aids in recovery. And then our age group interview today is with Andy Biggs, and I've raced against Andy unbeknownst to me. It was in Targu Mews, he told me. First come across Andy on Facebook at the virtual duathlon page, put together by episode 2's Nick Price. So yeah, Andy's on there and he's a big supporter of that, and as he says in the interview, helped us get through lockdown. So Andy, as I've christened him now as the age group Tim Don, and you've probably seen from the photographs that have gone out for the promo for this show. Unfortunately, he had a nasty bike accident and he ended up, like Tim Don, in a halo. So Andy tells us all about that and all about his background and how he came to multisport age group. Great interview, really nice chat. Hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Fascinating to find out about the halo, what a life-changing event that was for him. So we're coming to the end of March. Beginning of April's round the corner, and weather's picking up tremendously. This week we're going to have a mini heat wave up to 20 degrees apparently. I actually got out on my road bike and did a brick session on the road bike last weekend, which was nice. I really enjoyed that. It was made a change from Zwift and then running. Still carrying on with the Zwift, dropping down the endurance, increasing the intensity. I've got my first race coming up in the middle of April. Hope you guys have got races planned, and more importantly, I hope they take place. Bit of a strange one, got the race brief through, and within the COVID guidelines that's been set out for these race organisers, and we're all going to be set off separately apparently. So it'll be more like a time trial than an actual head-on race. Not sure how it's going to work out, but it'll be interesting. Different type of racing. The race was supposed to be drafting, but now obviously that's non-drafting. So again, we'll just see what happens. Just enjoy the experience of it all. So that's coming up for me, and I hope you guys have got races coming up and you enjoy the experience of getting back out there and putting all your 2020 hard work to some use. Right, coming up next we've got TriTenacious strength and conditioning coach Dave Cripps, and on this third and final part Dave's discussing about how much time we need to put into our strength and conditioning and what it entails, and also how strength and conditioning plays a part in recovery. So hope you enjoy it and see you on the other side. But how much of strength and conditioning should we do per week?
So I think one of the challenges that fits in with time is that most strength and conditioning originally originated from strength and power sports, particularly like rugby. Really good example. Those guys have more time to do this type of work potentially, and it's naturally more relatable to them. When I look at multi-sport athlete, I know myself, my training, all the coaching work, I've got a family, 3 kids and a wife. Yeah. It's a hell of a lot to juggle before you even think about adding on a fourth discipline. Well, I think a lot of the time, because people look at information from other sports, or they look at information from coaches who are mainly used to working in other sports, they believe the amount of training that they have to do with strength and conditioning is actually a lot more than they actually need to. So we always say that the quality of the training completely surpasses the quantity of it. So if we take a typical ballpark figure of people who we work with in multi-sport, for example, they might do anywhere between 50 to 80 minutes of strength and conditioning a week. However, that won't necessarily be one session or two big sessions. There's various different ways, and I'm more than happy to talk about them in a moment, that we can divide that up because of actually physically how we're training the body. So it's quite different to endurance, where you almost have to block your training because creating fatigue is really important. Strength and conditioning for endurance sports is actually very different. So we can actually be a lot more versatile with that kind of 50 to 80 minutes a week, how we use it over the week. And actually, we can incorporate that into other things. So if you're doing a main strength session a week, which is maybe 40 minutes, the remainder that you need to do can actually just be included in warm-ups that precede your swim, your bike and your run, which you probably would have already done. But by doing more focused work, you're not only ticking off the warm-up box, but you're ticking off the extra strength and conditioning work to give the improvements that we want. So yeah, typically we'd say 50 to 80 minutes a week is it's enough. We know that. We see improvements through, for example, minute mile running pace, power output measurements if we're looking on the bike. So it does work, but the key is it's very focused. We're not, when you know every exercise its purpose, when you know how every rep will benefit that athlete, you can be very, very effective because the quality is right up there. Whereas if you're not using exercises because you don't know how they will benefit things, we call it the kitchen sink approach. You'll throw everything at it. So only 50% of it might stick. So again, the quality of it will be low, and usually you'll feel I have to do more than.
If you were to go in and do a 45-minute workout twice a week, what would that entail for covering the swim and the bike and the run part of the strength?
Cool. Well, the first thing I'd say on that, it's very rare that we would have anybody who would do two big 45-minute sessions. Right. There are some, but for most people involved in multi-sports, that's practically a little bit challenging. So what we'll typically do, we'll have one big main focus strength session, which could be anywhere between, again, 40, 45 minutes. And then the rest of the work that we pick up is where we'll drop that into maybe warm-ups before swim, bike and run, and we can almost drip feed that in. So all of that we can fit together in a bit of a more a concise way, which they know they can do. So in terms of content, so if we're looking at movements or exercises to tick off all the different things that we can actually do, the first thing is like what actually underpins performance in swim, bike and run. Otherwise, it's kind of just guesswork. So if we look at bike and run to start with as an example, we know that if we can improve strength as our hips and our knees extend, so basically if you imagine as if you've got a bent leg, as you push it down to the floor, your hip and your knee extends. That's what we mean by that. We know that if we develop strength during that movement, that's going to transfer fundamentally pretty damn well to swimming and cycling. Now there is some more detail to this about the speed that you do that and the angles. That's kind of more icing on the cake stuff. I think the biggest thing to realise first of all is that we're using exercise that allow our hip and our knee to extend because they are the primary functions that provide power and propulsion when we cycle and when we run. Even then when we look to swimming, our hip extensors, so basically like our glute muscles, big muscles in our bus-ups, they play a big part in kicking. Obviously, what's the big thing all the time when we're swimming? Don't kick from your knee, kick from your hip. It's your gluteal muscles that do that. When we're looking at swimming as well, if you compare, like we said, with running and cycling, it being about extending your hip and your knee, with swimming, the thing we're looking at, it's about the ability, if you manage pull through the water, so what we call flexing through the shoulder, it's the ability to have strength during that. So we use exercises predominantly which we call like vertical pulling movements. So if you imagine a pull-up, the pull-up's a good example. You're starting in that position there and you're pulling yourself up. Main reason, again, that's using muscles that essentially provide propulsion when we swim. So latissimus dorsi, your lat muscles, they're the big powerhouses, and funny enough, they're the ones that we can develop strength and power best with when we're doing strength work. So again, that's another reason why that would be another block. So as an example, even though I've just spoken about swim, bike and run, all I've said is just exercises which extend your hip and your knee, and exercises which basically just pull your arm down to your side, if you like.
Yeah.
It would be really easy for me to on the face that said, well, we need exercises for your glute muscles, your hamstring muscles, to bend your elbow, to extend your elbow, triceps. When we're combining it into these what we call compound movements, it makes it much more easier, not only to train, but for people to actually understand how they can apply it into their training.
Yeah.
And then the final bit on that, again, if we're looking at kind of, I suppose, like injury prevention. I know it's not a very sexy word, it's pretty boring, but I think particularly as we get a bit more grey in the hair, we can a bit more aware of it. We always say in injury prevention is that it's not about that on the face of it, it's about allowing your body to be more robust so you can spend more time doing what you love, which is swim, bike and run, or it might just be bike and run, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if we're doing strength training the right way, we know that can happen without fail. So within those strength sessions that we just spoke about, that's sometimes where some of these more accessory exercises we use to address certain things. So if we've got somebody who does running, for example, that's where maybe we do some isolated calf work with them, particularly if they've got a history of calf strains or particularly Achilles problems.
Yeah.
Most Achilles problems actually occur mainly because there's a weakness in the muscle that attaches to it, so your calf muscles. We can also then cut common areas, what would usually be called core, so core strength. We know that plays a big role in lower back pain from cycling, in terms of overstriding, so bad mechanics for running, in terms of back pain, so using your back muscles as opposed to your buttock muscles when you're kicking your swim. Again, that's another area that sometimes again, we can cover within our strength training programs each week. So without, I think, going too much more deeper than that, for even more, fundamentally, if we're ticking those boxes, we're going to have a pretty well-rounded strength and conditioning program.
I think the other value, especially coming from an age group point of view, where we start from 18 all the way up to till you're 80, 90, whatever. I've seen the whole range, and as we get older, into our 40s and 50s. 60s, 70s, 80s. Strength is so important, so we don't lose, because you're losing your muscles, aren't you, as you get older. If you don't use them, you lose them. That's the saying, isn't it? It's really important from that aspect as well as we get older. And even if we weren't multi-sport athletes, doing those exercises is crucial and critical for decent longevity.
Yeah, I suppose, unfortunately, most of us probably come to that understanding having sustained a few injuries or a bad one. So it's almost like you have to go sometimes through the stress or frustration of an injury to start to actually realise some of the things you have to do. But again, I do think it boils a lot down to, even then, it can be very difficult sometimes for multi-sport athletes to understand or incorporate strength and conditioning work, proper strength and conditioning work, because it's still not, well, how do I do it? How do I not risk getting injured more? How do I fit it into my schedule? And also just like classic myths like around, well, am I going to start to put on muscle? Again, one of the things we always say with strength training is the amount of strength training that a triathlete will typically be able to do is very limited anyway. But the way that you use strength training in no way actually promotes the things that cause increases in muscle mass. Ironically, some of the common errors, which I'm more than happy to talk about in a bit with how strength training is typically done in the endurance world, actually is more likely to promote muscle gain than the actual approaches that you do to apply it properly that actually won't do that. So I'm more than happy to talk about that in a bit. But we usually finally get to that point, don't we, when we've had a few muscle strains or a few back spasms, and we've had that frustration point.
Where do you see recovery in all this?
Yeah. So again, what I think, if we look at the things from a recovery perspective that people usually worry about with strength work, first one is delayed muscle soreness. So the old DOMS. Yeah. The worry of, well, am I going to have that bad DOMS? It's going to completely ruin my, 50-mile bike ride.
And to be fair, I have experienced that myself. I've missed periods of the gym. Say when it shut down, it all went into lockdown, and I didn't have any weights or anything at home or whatever. And then I got some, and I started again, not lifting over heavily or whatever, but I felt it, and my legs were in bits. So that affects your running, doesn't it? Like you were about to say probably, and it's.
Yeah, it's naturally. I mean, we've all been there. It's naturally something we want to minimise and avoid. But it's remembering that, even if you up your running volume, or you change your cycling position, even our three main disciplines, we're always going to get DOMs. Yeah. It's not something that's unique to strength. But there are a number of key things we can do that really limits getting significant DOMs from strength work. So the risk of getting extra DOMs would be no more different to DOMs that you could get from your swim, bike or run. The one that you've mentioned is a brilliant one. The fancy word for it that scientists call it's called repeated bout effect. Basically what it means is if you don't repeat an exercise within a 7-day window, you're going to get bloody sore. So the key thing is to have a consistent training regime. So it's a bit like, I don't know, if you missed a run or something and you haven't ran as far one week and then it suddenly spikes up, your calves are in pieces, your hamstrings are a lot tighter. It's exactly the same principle. Yeah. The challenge that I think makes it even more likely with strength work are two reasons. The first one is people struggle to have a consistent weekly strength program because they think they've got to do more than they need to. So they smash one week and they might do like 2 hours, and then the next week they're like, oh damn, I can't fit my 2 hours in. And then it might be 3 weeks later they do something, and that basically means, like your example, is because they haven't done it in a 7-day window, they're going to get really sore. The other element is exercises. So if you take, if we use a squat as an example, if you're used to squatting what we call like a half squat depth, and then I said, right, Rich, what we're going to do is we're going to now start to go into a full squat depth. Even if the weight stayed the same, even if you reduce the weight, the added range of motion, even though you're doing the same exercise, is highly likely, even if it's done in a 7-day window, to cause added delayed onset muscle soreness. So if you think most multi-sport athletes, there's a tendency to want to chop and change exercises very, very regularly, particularly if you haven't actually got a structured programmed regime like everyone does for their swim, bike and run. You just plop exercises out there. So again, it means that you're exposing yourself to very subtle different things, but they can contribute to something getting much more bigger muscle soreness. So that's where having consistency in your exercises is a big factor. Doesn't mean you do the same thing forever. Not all. I mean, we typically work off 4 to 6 week cycles where we start to adapt and change things subtly. Yeah. But if you're changing exercises every week, or you're not doing your strength work consistently every week, you're gonna get big DOMs. So avoiding those two things by having a realistic time frame that we can repeat each week. So whether it is, like I said, 50 to 80 minutes, by having consistency over 4 to 6 weeks of the exercises. And the final one would be just avoiding exercises that have big ranges of motion. So one guy who we coach, Dan Super, he originally sent me a video of him squatting, and he was doing a really deep squat, and it wasn't bad, but it was probably a little bit too deep for his technique. But I said to him, to be honest, Dan, if you think about when you swim, bike and run, your hip and your knee angle is nowhere near as deep as when you do a deep squat. And you're training for swim, bike and run. So even though there might be some small 1% gains in going deeper, we're probably going to get better outcomes from not going as deep. And again, that's a way that we can avoid muscle soreness. Big motions where we're really lengthening muscles, they cause more muscle soreness. Now, there are some exercises that are really effective where the benefits outweigh the negatives. But yeah, a simple way to reduce DOMs is just don't go through ranges of motion greater than you actually necessarily have to as well. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on going back to the recovery? What are your thoughts on like things like yoga, Pilates, using foam rollers, using massage guns, all that type of thing to, once you've done your strength training sessions, or even after every session that you've been doing?
Yeah, again, looking at this from years of coaching, it's a very individual, because no scientific study could really ever do this, because you can't have a group of people foam roll and a group of people imaginary foam roll. You've got to do it, so you can't measure it. But I think if somebody feels something is helping them recover, I think as a coach, it's quite dismissive to turn around and say, well, actually, there's no evidence on that and it doesn't work. Typical things that we commonly say is, one is just protein. We know that an intake of protein within the training window can reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. That doesn't need to be anything sexy in terms of, particular protein shake or anything. Protein's protein. We can find it in many different sources. So that's one potential option. But again, a lot of the exercises, if you're doing this correctly, aren't going to require something like that, because you're not going to get bucket loads of muscle soreness afterwards. Mobility work, I think a good strength and conditioning program includes mobility work within it. So what I always say is, you need to rest. One of the biggest challenges what we find when first working with multi-sport athletes is when they do strength work, they just want to smash for it. It's like interval training, one exercise, next exercise, and that compromises the intensity. So one way we get them to recover, so we can keep the intensity, i.e. the weight they can move higher, so they can get greater gains in what we discussed, is to use mobility, because it's so low intensity, but it gives them something to do. Now, whether that impacts delayed onset muscle soreness, I think it's highly unlikely, but if somebody thinks it does, I think it's a really good time-efficient way to do stretching. Because if you do strength work and you think I've got to stretch afterwards, it extends the length of your session. Yeah. Whereas if you think, well, I can do my strength work and my mobility work within the same window, and it won't compromise either. Cool. So I think stretching, again, it's very specific to the person. But if they think it's a benefit to them, do it within the session. And then things like foam rolling and massage guns, again, very mixed evidence on it. I think if you think it works for you, go for it. Yeah. But don't get too distracted from the fact that essentially it's just a cheap way of getting a massage, which is better than not having a massage. But that's essentially what it is. But with the stretching and with that soft tissue work, is one big tip is be targeted with it. So a bit like the strength work that we described, every exercise has a very definitive purpose. We're trying to train this movement and these muscles because they link into calf injury, they link into running mechanics, whatever it is. Usually what happens with like flexibility work or soft tissue work, it's a bit like, well, I'll just do it everywhere, which again takes more time. But if you actually commonly look at the restrictions that people have with their mobility, so in what we call your thoracic spine, the bit below your neck, but the bit above your lower back, most multi-sport athletes can't rotate there well enough, which is a common risk to do with shoulder injury, can also potentially limit swim mechanics. They can't extend there as well. Again, big limiting factor for stroke length and also shoulder injuries and lower back injuries. So that's a really good place to focus detail on. Hip flexors and quadriceps, if they're overly tight, they twist your pelvis, they can put you at greater risk of lower back pain. So again, if you can be really targeted with that recovery work that you do for stretching because you think it's a benefit for you, I think it'll be a lot more time efficient, and you'll probably actually feel that it allows you to at least feel you're recovering a little bit better. So I'd love to give an answer that's like, Richard, we know like doing this amount of a certain stretch or with a foam roller gives you 20% extra. It's something that's impossible to study, but I do always think it's a bit like with nutrition, isn't it? Even though there are fundamentals you can stick to, I think you've always got to kind of respect the person in terms of what they feel works best for them as well. Yeah, totally agree, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure. I don't know whether you want to mention everything that you do, because we haven't sort of gone into that, whether you want to mention your website and the ebook and what you do on Instagram.
Yeah, so I think for multi-sport athletes, the main thing we do is called TriTenacious. We put a lot of stuff on Instagram every day. on a YouTube channel. So lots of free content. We've got a free ebook that people can start to look at to really grasp and understand a lot of what we talked about. So there's no better resource in the world to be able to find it off. And then people who are actually looking for more structured support, again, anywhere around the world, again, online, we do our online coaching, which is specifically strength and conditioning for multi-sport athletes. And that's where we focus our efforts, and that's the other side of things that we provide to people. Aside from the people we coach in person here, that's what's coalition performance essentially. That's our main training facility that we operate from in Solihull.
So that was Dave Cripps from TriTenacious. Like you said, you can catch him on all the multimedia channels. So head over there. Wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, and hope you've enjoyed the three-parter that we put together, and I hope you find it useful. So thank you again, Dave. Right, on to the main event. We've got Andy Biggs, the age group Halo athlete. See you on the other side. Welcome along to AMP, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Where do we find you in the world?
We find me in the world in the northeast of England, in Durham, the wonderful city of Durham, the best kept secret in the country. So please come and visit. But there was not enough space for everybody to live here, but it is a wonderful place. And I went to university here, having forgot to check the map when I came up from the deep south, and I've basically been here ever since.
You like it then?
Yeah, it's a wonderful place. It's a gorgeous, beautiful city, more than 900-year-old cathedral on a little promontory island where you can't do any more development, and the city is quite old but compact, and there's plenty of places to live in and around. But County Durham is a beautiful place. We've got a mainline train station 3 hours to London. We're only half an hour from the Newcastle airport, so good transport links and very friendly people. Great, I suppose, lifestyle here because it's miles cheaper than the southeast as well.
Absolutely, yeah, certainly will be. So what do you do for a living, Andy?
Me, historically I qualified as a chartered accountant. I now work as an independent consultant, work for myself, and I help companies improve their management reporting and forecasting by not dying the death of 1,000 spreadsheets, by using systems and data properly. Although I do teach people how to use spreadsheets properly. And I used to be a finance director. I've been a chief executive of an organization in my career, but I've essentially moved into post-corporate life so I can lead a bit more of a flexible training and working lifestyle, which suits my recent years' interest in triathlon.
Absolutely, yeah, great, good. So we'll start off with your history then. Growing up as a kid down south.
Well, the thing is, us age groupers, we've got quite a lot of history under, so I'll try and be as brief as I can. But I quite liked sport as a kid, but I was a really small kid. At 16, I was the smallest kid in my school. I grew really late, developed really late. So, a good big one will always be a good little one, and I was an okay little one. So, I was never particularly competitive. But I did once get selected for the school sports or the cross country team, only because all the fast lads went the wrong way and I listened to instructions and went the right way in the trials and found myself actually hitting one of the top 3 places to go to the county championships. Whoa! But then I finished second. Oh, to last.
I saw that in your email. I was hoping you would bring that up because that did make me smile.
Yeah, so in essence, I'm very used to going to championship events and not being at the front end of the field. That's essentially my modus operandi.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, in terms of history, I went to university in Durham, where I am now. I'd grown quite a bit, quite fast, and I discovered sport, got into rowing, loved that big time, ran to keep fit or build strength, did a bit of S&C for that. But then having enjoyed sport, then left university, got a proper job, got married, entered the professional career, didn't have time for sport. And essentially I started running just occasionally, but having done my first Great North Run half marathon as a student, and I then dabbled for the next 10 years, one Great North Run every 3 years or so, got myself fit for 3 months, then did nothing for 2.5 years. I mean, I said nothing, I mean literally no sport. Yeah. So early 30s, thought, got kids, I want to get myself fit for the long term, started running a bit more, enjoyed it, did a few more half marathons, and then joined a local club here. And I think one of the things that I reflect upon now, I wish I joined earlier, because I thought me as a sort of at best mediocre athlete would join a club and it will all be serious elite people, and it would all be serious people who look down on somebody of average ability like myself. And so, give anybody advice, if you have the opportunity, join a club, because you generally find there are lots of people, a wide range of abilities. And even then, the people who are faster than you really encourage you to make the best of yourself. And there was a couple of older guys who took me under their wing, and I improved year on year for about 5 years after joining the club in the early 2000s, and got myself to actually a reasonable running standard, sub 38 for 10K, and, enjoying my running really big time. And started doing marathons, because that's what you do. You aspire to do the marathons. Like, every triathlete aspires to do Ironman maybe, but the sensible ones pick their events. But, runners did 11 marathons over 11 years.
Wow.
And eventually worked out that I'm not a long distance athlete. I'm much more a 5K, 10K runner than I am a long distance. Probably got myself in shape to do close to 3 hours, then was ill the year I was in shape to do it. Kept chasing 3 hours as a target in my head, never really made it. I eventually gave up in 2013. Gave up. I'd done a triathlon in 2009 just for a bit of a laugh. But I reckon that triathlon was going to be really expensive. If this was a pool triathlon, I'd have to buy a wetsuit, I'd have to buy a flashy bike. Yeah. And I did that triathlon on my flat-handled off-road tired bike. And,
But then that's what a lot of people do, isn't it? A lot of people start off with just, it's a local event, so they think, oh yeah, I'll have a go at that. And they've either come from a swimming or a running or a cycling background, and they'll think, I'll have a go at that. And what you were saying about the running club, Ebba Shellcross, who was on last episode, the episode before that, she also said about the running club, join the running club, because it brings you on so much. And that's what happened in my experience as well. I joined the local running club, and like you, we're the same age, over the 5 years of being in there, I just come on leaps and bounds. So that's a great piece of advice.
Well, it is. And I've seen some scientific studies, since I did that, which some Australians had researched that when you start doing a sport seriously, or when you start running seriously, whatever it means for you to say running seriously, no matter when you start doing that, you improve for about 5 years just by being consistent and putting the training in. So if you start at age 15, by the time you're 20, you'll be fast. You'll have physically developed as well. But if you start at 25 or 30 or 45 or even 70, I know there's one of our fellow age groupers who's back up in Northumberland who I think she started running age 59. She won silver medal in Northumbria last year in the duathlon. And so you train consistently. Physiologically, you've got to improve year on year and year, and getting around people who can give you advice and help you out and encourage you. I think you can improve. Then the challenge comes. What do you do when you hit that point? What do you do next? And for me, after running, that was about, well, let's give triathlon a bit more of a serious try then. Because I bought a road bike by then, not an expensive, flashy carbon fiber road bike, but, it had drop handlebars. And so, I'd done a couple of sportives with work, because we had a couple of keen cyclists, and they roped a works team in to do a 300-kilometre event in Sweden, as you do. Yeah. Loved that. And I thought, well, I've got a bike now. All I need to do is buy a wetsuit and let's give it a go. And loved it. Was really hooked. The thing about running, and about you and running, you get into this model of, I need to run precisely 6 minutes and 21 seconds a mile in order to hit this target, in order to get to that PB. And you become so obsessed with the pace that you run at when you're racing that it becomes a bit of a pressure. And, you end up with all these sort of, very firm ideas about what training paces you're meant to do. And as soon as I went to multisport, it's all out the window, because every course is different. It has a variable wind on the bike. It has a variable gradient. The swim conditions can be very different. And the run's a bit more predictable, but you're quite knackered by the time you get to that stage. So you're not necessarily going to know what speed you're going to get to run at. You just kind of do it, do your best, enjoy it. And at the end of it, think, oh, I maybe do a bit better if I get my transitions a bit better. Or, I really ought to get in the pool and swim. Or in my case, go, triathlon's for fun, duathlon's for competing. I'm not a great swimmer. I'm an okay swimmer, but, I come out nearer the back. And therefore, it's who can I overtake on the bike? Who can I overtake on the run? And in duathlon, I'm sort of start roughly where I'm going to finish, hopefully. But, it's much more fun to do the multi-sport stuff. And only after I'd done a few did it occur to me that, there's this age group thing that somebody mentioned to me.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that, but before we get to that, so you've got to university and you've become a little bit more sporty, and so you before I rudely interrupted, you were telling me about your first triathlon that you'd got into.
Yeah. Okay. The first triathlon, a friend of mine said,
how did that come about? Just how?
Well, I think a friend of mine had suggested, she knew people who did triathlon, and said, well, why don't you do triathlon? You're a reasonable runner. And I was like, no, I don't know. I mean, I used to swim when I was like in my teens, but I can't do front crawl. I can only do breaststroke. And I don't have an expensive bike. But then I thought, well, I know people who do triathlon. I know there are people in the running club who do triathlon.
Right.
And therefore, maybe I'll just do it for a laugh, because so it happened in my home region back in Sussex. There was a thing called the Sussex Triathlon, which would run pool swim in a school swimming pool.
Yeah.
And then the school playing fields were used for the run and the transition. And so since it was like near where my family lived, and I live in the north, I thought, why don't I combine a trip down south to my family? We're taking my bike.
Yeah.
And we'll just have a laugh, and then my wider family can come and see me. I was on the back of a really heavy spring of training. I'd just done London Marathon. I'd just done, my PBs in 10K, 5K, etc. And it was just almost a post-racing season, bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
Let's do something different. And because it was a pool swim, it was only 400 meters. I thought, well, I'll just breaststroke. That'll be fine. Yeah, I can't front crawl.
People don't know. There's no, in fact, some breaststrokers are faster than some people doing front crawl.
Well, I know for a fact now. I've now got to the stage, 11 years later, when I can front crawl faster than I can breaststroke. But I know for a fact I can still breaststroke my way around people who are doing front crawl in races. If I choose to sight by doing breaststroke, I don't slow down very much.
Yeah.
So it was just a laugh, and I did it, and that was that. Really, I was then back onto the marathon trail again, and
so that was just a one-off, was it?
Just a one-off.
Yeah. So how many years then was it until you did another one, and how did you decide to go back into it?
Well, that was 5 years. I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah.
5 years. And by the time we got into that, I think I knew more triathletes. I got to know more people who did triathlon who ran, including I got to know, I don't know if anyone knows Dan Jenkin. Dan is a bit of a multi-sport age group legend, multiple world European championship. He's podium virtually every time he does an age group.
Right.
I think he also, is it 2014, 2015, he elite selection as well. But he's in my running club. No, Dan, he's a really nice guy. And he was sort of a bit of well, if Dan can do it, I know he's a miles better runner than me, but it's very visible that he's out there doing it. One of the coaches, the athletics coaches said, oh, that Dan, if he only focused on running, he'd be a really decent runner. Yeah, why is he bothering with triathlon stuff?
Yeah, you find that's what athletic coaches say, because I had the same as well. What are you bothering with all that for? Why don't you just concentrate on running?
Yeah, and I think it was after the fact, 2013 London Marathon, which was, as it turns out, the last marathon I did. I got myself in reasonable shape. I put myself through a training program. I'm not going to walk at any point. I'm going to run the whole way. I'm going to pace it correctly. I've got 10 years of experience of marathons. This is what I do. I'm a runner. I do marathons. And I got onto it, and I did a personal best.
Yeah.
Fastest time ever. But I still struggled, and it was really hard. I thought, I'm just ready for something different. This is hard work, devoting 3 months of my life to lock myself away into 3-hour runs on a Saturday morning, and I'm tired and achy all the time, and I'm doing a bit of cycling with these work events. You know what? Let's give triathlon a go. And so I got involved with a charity as a trustee. And I thought, what the heck? Why don't I do a challenge event? I'll do a challenge event for the charity, and I will have a summer of triathlon. After the season finishes, after the season of marathons finishes. So I said, right, I've not done a full distance triathlon before, not standard distance. So I'm going to do a standard distance triathlon at the end of the summer. No, I'm going to do 3 standard distance triathlons, because that's the triathlon of triathlons. But I'm also going to then do separate events beforehand. So I thought I'll do a 10K at pace during the early summer. I'll do the Great North Swim, which is a mile in Lake Windermere. and I'll do a big long cycle event up in the northeast of England called, the cyclone event. So I'll do those on like really short order in almost like consecutive weekends, and then I'll do 2 further triathlons to put it all together. So I'll do a triathlon of triathlons. That's a sort of headline to raise money for the charity. It's a bit more of a challenge than just, if I just did a triathlon coming off the back of marathon training, it wouldn't have been something I could sell so much for raising money for charity.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd do it for charity, and I quite enjoy it, I think. And run form carried over. I didn't drown, and I didn't fall off the bike. And so having done that in that summer, I thought, and I really want to continue with this now. So looked around for what I might do the following season, and at that point, I was aware of the age group thing. So, whatever. There's
How did you find out? Sorry, how did you find out about the age group?
That was because of Dan, more or less, because I knew he was competing, at a relatively senior level. I think that was the year. I think he got selected for the GB Elite team for the World Duathlon Championships.
Okay.
So I was following what he was doing, and he said there is age group racing as well. It isn't just about the elite stuff. And I looked around. BTF joined, looked at the qualifications. Thought, there's an event happening in a few weeks, in about 3 or 4 months' time. Let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing that got me aware of it, so I quite forgot this, but there was, in our triathlon club, we run a monthly duathlon training session.
Right.
It's called a training session because it's not race permitted, it's not race conditions in one sense, but you are encouraged to, in your mind, treat the training session as if it was a race. It's on public roads, so it's all about going out and training on a bike like you would do. But we run a quiet run around a housing estate, set up a transition area, so you practice your transitions. Yeah. Then you do a tempo session on the bike. Then you come back in and transition again, and then you do the same loop around a housing estate. So this monthly duathlon thing, and I had done this as part of the local triathlon club, as a sort of trainee, a tester, as a member.
Right.
A little bit earlier. I think almost when I did my first triathlon, I did this once. So came and did that, and then saw this guy there who was wearing, not the sort of casual lycra that I was wearing. He was wearing this blue tri-suit with 3 letters GBR on. What's that all about? Oh, that's because he's a GBR age group athlete. And he proceeded then to go past the whole field with his very, very fast bike that sounded like a car when it overtook you, with his huge disc wheel that rumbled. But I thought, that sort of thing exists, and you spot a couple of other people who you meet in the club who've done age group, and then somebody goes past you and they're the age group world champion in the female 64 to 69 age group.
And then a whole new sort of like world opens up in front of you, doesn't it? When you suddenly realise that it's a thing.
Well, yeah, and for me it wasn't a serious thing. I still had memories of finishing second to last in the county cross country championships as a 14-year-old, but it was okay. This would be a bit of a laugh. Why don't I see where I'm at by going to a qualification event?
Yeah.
And as it happened, I was at the level that got me in the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was 2014. So 2015, I went out to Alcobendas, or Alco Horrendous, as it's known, because of the weather that happened on the day.
We've all got stories of bad weather, haven't we? And
well, we have, and that was me realizing that I'm not going to be winning medals. I'm not in the same class as Dan. I'm 20 years older than Dan, but I'm good enough to get some, not self-esteem from being great, but some. Actually, I can be good enough to enjoy my sport here without feeling like I'm right at the back, and I'm good enough to get to the age group kind of thing. But in local races, I'm not finishing last, and I'm even looking at people who are finishing well down, and they're having a great time.
Yeah,
the inclusivity of triathlon is almost more than running events. Yeah, everybody respects a runner who plods around and achieves it, but there are sort of fun runners who don't really go at any sort of speed, and perhaps they don't get respect to the same extent from the mass of faster club athletes at the front.
Yeah,
but it tends to be in triathlon, the multi-sport stuff. Everybody gets respected and cheered on, and if you're right at the back in a local event, everybody's having a good cheer, sense of encouraging them. It's really so much more inclusive than I thought it was going to be.
That's so true. I mean, like people of all different ages and shapes and sizes, you know, rocking up on all different types of equipment. It's just amazing and incredible to see, isn't it, that, like you've just said, people just support and they'll stay till the very last one's in. You know, you wouldn't probably get that in a marathon or whatever. You'd probably, somebody's doing a marathon and most people are probably gone by the time the last person. That doesn't really happen in triathlon or duathlon. You know, it's just like you said, it's completely different, a completely different feel.
We've run a club event, before didn't run it last year, not running this year, but we ran a club event, a triathlon up in Weardale. And aside from the fact that all the volunteers do have to hang around for the last person to come in because we've got to dismantle the transition area and everything else. But there was a couple of times years ago, there was a lass who was really quite slow on her flat handled, you know, not really tired bike at the back. And I think we escorted her around the course. She was well behind everybody else on the bike, and then she had to get on the run. And one of the guys from the club then basically ran sort of with her to keep her going, make sure she was okay from a safeguarding point of view, making sure she wasn't in any real distress, but she was happy enough. And she got to the finish and she loved it, and she was so happy to finish. And one of the other guys said, "You know who that was who was running with you, don't you?" No, just a sort of club member. No, that was the world quadrathlon age group champion. It's a guy in our club, separate guy. Quadrathlon, which had canoeing to the three. And he happened, it's a fairly sort of niche thing, but he happened to have won his age group in the world championships, and he just ran with this lass and was really happy to do so and was encouraging her along. And she got probably the biggest cheer of the day, because we could go home and dismantle transition, but she came to the finish line and it was such a good experience for her. She wrote about it afterwards on our Facebook, and it was just really good to be part of.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? You know, for everybody, that's the spirit of the sport, really. So it's really,
I think so.
But like you like a lot of people, it's when you join clubs and things, then you get to find out about GB and age group and things. And like I said earlier, it's a whole different world for you to have a go at. And you said, oh, well, never going to win a medal and stuff. But for me, it's about consistency. And I had Mark Shepherd on a few weeks back, and he was talking about, as we get older and we stay consistent, we don't need to get any faster. We just need to stay as fast as we are. And then we might have a chance of actually getting to where we'd all like to be on the podium. But me, like you, it's not going to happen at the minute because I just ain't fast enough. There's a lot, these guys running 5Ks and 10Ks, they're just unbelievable, the times that they can do. So what you said was quite, it's quite apt, really. And it laid a seed in my mind. Not that I would stop doing it anyway, but the longevity, the longer you go, the longer you can exist in the sport, I suppose. It's you've got a better chance.
Yeah, I think you just got to be good enough to be at that level that's acceptable to pull on the GB tri-suit and do it, which is it's a challenge in itself. But
it's not easy.
If we can survive, not just survive, but survive as a competitive athlete for a longer period of time, there's plenty of ways to go. I think we're in the same age group, and it's pretty darn competitive in the middle-age crisis groups. People who are perhaps post the demands of young family, perhaps with a bit more disposable income. There's a lot of us trying to compete for places. If you're 75, there are probably fewer people trying to compete. If you're 30, there are probably fewer people trying to qualify at that stage. So we've just got to outlive all of our peers and stay sharp enough. I don't think you talk about the other bits that go on, but my big challenge at the moment is because I was at a reasonably high level of running before I entered multisport. It's got worse as I've balanced up training with swimming and biking. But I'm doing okay. But then I'm now got a very different challenge. 6 weeks after Romania last year, I fell off my bike in training.
Okay.
And so this is a podcast, so you can't see all this. So I'll describe it. But I was going down a hill about 30 miles an hour on a triathlon training session. Yeah. For one reason or another, my back wheel started wobbling. I think it was a puncture. I put my brakes on to try and slow. I over-egged my front wheel brake, locked it, and basically my head butted the tarmac at 30 miles an hour.
Ouch.
My helmet is a mess. My head was bleeding a bit from where I had a sort of abrasion from the helmet, but without it, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
So, we always wear a helmet anyway, but my helmet saved any serious brain injury. But the impact of landing squarely straight on my head cracked 3 vertebrae in my upper back, just below my neck, the top thoracic vertebra, 2 down from that, and then the one between my shoulder blades. And it could have been very, very nasty. I was very lucky not to be paralyzed.
Yeah.
I got up off the deck, waiting for the next rider to come down the hill behind me, but I probably shouldn't have got up.
Yeah.
And
you didn't know at the time that's what you'd done.
No, at the time I was bleeding from my face. I wondered whether I just sort of scraped my face off, but I broke my nose and my orbital as well around my eye, but that was minor. Then my back started to ache a bit after about a minute of sitting there, and as it turned out. So I ended up with a contraption just like Tim Don had after his crash prior to Kona.
The halo.
So I had a halo fitted in hospital a few days after that.
Did you get any photographs?
Oh yeah, I've got loads of photographs.
Well, you've got to send us a photograph.
I'll send you the photographs
for our promo.
In fact, more than that, I mean, I've actually still got the halo because they were going to dispose of it, so I kept it as a souvenir. So yeah, I had a great deal. When they said we're planning to fit, your back, I had an unstable fracture of the T1, which is right at the top of the spinal cord. So if it moved, I was in big trouble. So they had to immobilize everything. So essentially, for those who don't know what a halo is, it's got more carbon fiber on it than my bike. It's a carbon fiber ring that they screw into your head. Yeah. That's why it's called a halo. And it then attaches carbon fiber rods to it, 4 rods going up into it, that then attach to a big plastic vest that is strapped around your chest. So essentially, it immobilizes your upper back and neck and your ability to move your head totally. You are locked in. It's like having a cast on your leg. This is what they do for upper back or neck fractures. And I could not move my head for 4 months.
Blimey.
So I could walk after a while.
So was it the back pain that made you go and get it checked out then? Or what? How did that play out?
Well, no, not even checked out, because basically we were an A&E job. So fortunately, one of the people who was out riding was a doctor.
Right.
She arrived slightly after some of the others, but I mean, we were aware what to do. The first person on the scene was a physio, so she was medically trained. We had an emergency response procedure as a club. So whilst I made sure I was sitting there, we kept the helmet on, I was sitting there, and they took the decision: are we going to phone 999 and get an ambulance to come, or are we going to take you in to the hospital? Mm. The decision was taken before the doctor arrived to try and since I was sitting up, to try and get me in the car. Mm-hmm. And drive me slowly to the hospital, because that would be the quickest way of getting me to A&E. Yeah. The doctor arrived and said, at that point, I was being put into the car and said, oh, no, we shouldn't have moved him. But now we've moved him, he's in the car. Right. Yeah. She actually knelt on the back seat in the car and neck braced me with her forearms and arms.
Wow.
As we drove at about 3 miles an hour, slowly, all the way to the hospital. I was then immobilized in the car. And then the paramedics did the whole neck brace and backboard and stuff at A&E when I got to hospital. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not that my back was hurt. My back was hurting big style by then. And I was in shock. And I knew what to expect with going into shock. But I knew we had medically trained people and an emergency response protocol there. And they dealt with me fine from there. We probably shouldn't have put me in the car, but we did what we. Well,
it's one of those, isn't it? It's you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because if you didn't get there as quickly as you had, who knows what could have happened. So.
Well, as it turned out, there wasn't urgency there, but I think everybody made the decision they should have. In hindsight, I think people learned something, and we got away with it. Yeah. But I was I had unstable fracture, so my neck, basically my head shouldn't have moved versus my neck and my back, and that's what they did. They immobilized my neck to my back and got me in a stable position.
Wow. So
I spent 10 days in hospital.
Yeah,
9 days in hospital, because my son got married 10 days after the accident, and I went to the wedding with his halo on. And then about nearly 4 months in this halo before they finally released it. Yeah. No training to speak of.
Yeah, well, that's good. Good to hear.
I managed to walk. I walked a park run once.
Yeah,
I walked a park run. And then we're back on the trail now to get back fit, race fit, and thankfully, I'm relatively symptom-free, still a bit back niggles, but I'm fully functional now. I can run, I can swim, I can bike, subject to lockdown.
Good news. Good news.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a nice ending to could have been a tragic story, really, but yeah.
Yeah, it could have been.
Great to hear.
But, very grateful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be able to, get back into life. And also, the other thing I can say, if anybody's coming back from serious injury, it's not about the end goal. It's about enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
Because actually, I've had to reset all of my time expectations for how fast I can run.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed the journey of saying, right, there is now no time expectation. I cannot now look at doing a 20-minute 5K or anything like that right now. I just need to go, you know what, 28 minutes is where I've benchmarked it. So let's see if we can do 27 and a half. So let's see if we can do 27. So let's see when I get to 26, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it builds a level of competition with myself that is quite difficult to do when you're at that kind of peak of, I might shave 3 seconds off the time.
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of relate to that with what I had to go through a few years back as well. But it's until you've had one of those life-changing things, you don't get it, you don't appreciate it, and as I always say at the end of the program, the podcast, you just got to love the process and not
absolutely.
get wrapped up in everything else. And it is what it is, and I know we're all competitive, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. But if you can keep enjoying and loving the process, then it's not a chore, it's a joy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And if you only live for that one race and that one day where you're going to have an awesome experience and perform to your best, then you're going to miss the joy of the journey. And we all know it happens that target race happens when we suddenly caught a virus 10 days before, which is what happened to me the year I was in utter storming running form. I was on for a 3-hour marathon, all my stats said so, and I got a virus 10 days out and bombed out on the day. Trained 4 months, no alcohol, no sweets, putting all the miles in, doing the whole plan, and then they say your immune system gets shot to hell.
Yeah.
You catch something last moment and the race day is gone.
Yeah.
So enjoy those long runs in the sun. There might be a race at the end of it, or enjoy that bike ride, but the journey has to be the training and the fun. Otherwise, it ain't worth doing it.
Absolutely. Totally agree. So what's been your favourite sporting achievement?
Oh, that's a toughie. I think in terms of sporting achievement, it does come back to age group stuff, and it's crossing that finish line in a GB tri-suit. Maybe not the first time, actually. Probably the favourite one was Penticton in Canada. The second one out I did, or the third one out, which was the first World Championships. The weather was gorgeous. I had a really good day out on the bike and on the run. And it was like, I've done everything I could have done today. This is a brilliant event, and the experience around it. And on the day, being able to know there's a Finnish photographer who's taking your picture, and you go, I've paid a lot of blood, sweat, tears and money to get to this point. And then just crossing that finish line with your arms aloft, making sure you look like you've won the blooming thing. 20th place or whatever, but no, the photographer doesn't know that. That's probably my favorite point of sporting achievement.
Brilliant. And what advice would you give to anybody wanting to take up triathlon, and also anybody who's already in multi-sport would want to qualify and compete for their country?
I think that they're two different things, but they could quite coincidentally work depending on where people are at. I would say, if you want to take up triathlon, don't be put off by what you think you can't do. So a lot of people think they can't swim if they're a runner or a cyclist, or a lot of people think they can't run if they come from a swim or a cycle background. It tends to be a weakness either way. Most people think they can get on a bike and make it go forward, and that's pretty true. So just do the things you enjoy, and enjoy the journey of rapidly improving on the thing that you don't think you can do as well. So if you're a swimmer, I joined the Tri Club and I could string 3 lengths of front crawl together. That was it. I could breaststroke for a mile, but I couldn't string any speed together in front crawl. Couldn't breathe, basically. The whole task was to not drown. So just work on that and enjoy. And there does come a point, if you're a couch to 5K runner, there does come a point when you get enough fitness that you can run without feeling like you're about to die of a heart attack at one moment. And I think the whole thing happens with multi-sport. You get to a comfort zone where you can run consistently at pace if you've not been a runner before, or you can get to the stage where you can breathe without drowning at whatever speed is appropriate in the swimming, and enjoying that process. And also, I think our Tri Club has 4 disciplines: swim, bike, run, and social. And I've actually got some really good friends who I've met through these things, who it's just fun to be around people who are not similarly obsessed, if you understand what I mean, but similarly passionate about.
It's a lifestyle, though, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah, I do lots of things
with like-minded people.
Yeah, and I think people are very friendly and encouraging on the whole.
Yeah.
So just join a local tri club, get to know people, make friends, put yourself out there for, helping other people. If you're a runner, help other people run better. If you're a swimmer, help people. But just get involved and then enjoy the journey.
Yeah. Right.
And then, if that's a triathlon multi-sport thing, you don't get bored with one discipline. If you then think, there's age group things out there, well, the standard is there to be met. There is a minimum standard. You've got to be within a certain percentage of the fastest people in your age group in qualification events. But that standard is not unachievable for many, many athletes. So go out there, look at a qualification event. They're in most regions. Look at where people in your region are competing, and then maybe look at where they're finishing in your local events that you are doing or you've done, and work out roughly where you are and think, could I improve 5-10%? Where would that leave me? Am I good enough to go? And again, at the big championship events, the slowest person's not as slow as the slowest person in a local event, but there's still a lot of encouragement for people to finish nearer the back. There's no shame in finishing nearer the back, because if there's 20 people, 30 people in your age group, someone's got to finish back there.
Yeah.
I think not on my finest sporting moment, but you talk about the things I'm proudest of. Closest to that is finishing in the aquathlon in Targamures, where I swam and then ran.
Right.
And I only did the event principally because I'd qualified for several other events, and if you've qualified the other ones, they'll let you do the aquathlon as well.
Yeah.
So I swam in a GB tri suit, and I was not last. I was second to last, to repeat the thing from earlier. But I was second to last out of 16, so I was 15th out of 16.
Yeah.
But there were 16 guys in my age group there, and I was not last. And I did my utter best. And I didn't put myself to shame. I didn't put my country to shame, because half the field were Brits anyway. And I had a lot of fun, and I did what I could do on that day.
Yeah. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's, like we've both said, we're not up there with the front, but we are at A level, and that's what you've got to remember. Yeah, we might not win a medal, but we are at A level, and a lot of hard work goes into getting there. So you should be proud, and that's good, really good. Okay, moving on. What I was going to say, I was going to ask you something else before I ask the next question. But are you in a tri club at the moment?
I am. Durham Tri Club. That's what it says on the tin. It's in Durham, and it's a tri club. We have a reach a little bit further than the city of Durham, because we have people from sort of more rural areas in the county.
Sure.
Yeah, but there's quite an active triathlon club scene in the northeast of England. So there's little regional pockets where there are clubs, and it's got about just over 100 members.
Yeah.
I've got myself progressively involved in helping out. I'm on the committee.
Yeah.
And I'm not a qualified coach as yet.
Yeah. You're going to think about doing coaching?
Yeah, I think so. It's not so much that I want to give back, but it's quite fun to be in and around people and, share what you know. And we do have people coming into the club without much of a background. And I've got a long history in running, and now 5 or 6 years of multi-sport experience. So I think I have stuff to share, but of course you want to do it properly, risk assessed, with sports science based, all that kind of stuff. So it's appropriate to take a qualification at the stage. And it also means that the club can function properly, because we've got enough coaches that we can cover. It's not always, we've got a fantastic head coach. I must give a shout out to Ian McKenzie, who's our head coach, who is there at every blooming session, not just once a week, 4 or 5 sessions a week potentially, does planning, encourages athletes, coaches athletes on an individual basis as well. And it's just a real encouragement. And that's one of the things that he won, virtual coach of the year at our regional awards last year in the Northeast.
Yeah.
But it's a good healthy club to be part of, because it's got a lot of people of diverse backgrounds. And the other thing is people have very different expectations about how much training they want to put in or what sort of distance they want to race. So it's not all, I find that if you want to race a certain distance, there's normally somebody who's a standard or a sprint athlete. There's quite a few duathletes rather than just triathletes, and there's a mob who like doing half and full Ironman distances, and everybody sort of mixes up a bit on training.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to have a mixture of people involved and doing different things as well, isn't it? Really good.
Yeah, I think the only thing we struggle with at the moment is we've had a junior section. We technically still register for it, but we've struggled with all the demands of lockdown and everything else to keep the safeguarding protocols going alongside of all the lockdown social distancing, because we can't have parents involved. We can't have parents up and close with what we're doing. So we're kind of on a bit of a pause and furlough at the moment with juniors, and want to restart it in 2021 whenever we can.
Okay. You'll get back to that. That's good.
I'm sure we will.
Good. Bring the next generation on. Excellent.
Yeah.
So what is your favourite piece of kit and why?
You tipped me off you were going to ask me this one, and it still gave me a bit of thinking. I love stats and data. I really love stats and data. I'm a very, very sad individual. Yeah, professionally as an accountant, I'm into like numbers, and I like analysis and all that kind of stuff. So from a long way back, I've been making data work for me. Even before we had the likes of GPS, I used to record my runs and write it down the training log. So my favorite piece of kit now has to be my Garmin watch. I've got a Fenix 3,
right,
which it's probably a few years old now, but it works because it does run, bike and swim. It counts my pool laps. It works on GPS. And the thing I like about the watch I've currently got is that it sits on my wrist the whole time. We're sitting here on video as we record this. You can see it's sitting on my wrist. It's a real wristwatch that I wear all the time. And when I first got my first GPS watch, it was like a brick on your arm.
Yeah. Which one was that?
I had a Forerunner 110.
Right.
Which was, it's literally like a matchbox, a large matchbox on your arm.
Yeah.
And when you went to run, you had to figure out, where did I put it, firstly? And secondly, oh no, I forgot to charge it. Yeah. So now my favorite bit of kit is the watch that sits on my wrist the whole time. I can check how well charged it is, and it lasts for ages anyway. So, and then I get my stats back into, insert choice of service here. I haven't used Training Peaks as my main planner at the moment, but I'm also on Strava and etc. etc.
Yeah, good. Yeah, can't fault you with that choice. That's a really good choice. Right, finally then, the last question is, what are your short-term and long-term goals? Yeah, well, I kind of alluded to some of this earlier. Short-term is still at the moment for me, I have my first proper race I'm going to race at Yorkshire Duathlon in precisely 27 days time. I shall see you there. Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Yeah. I look forward to that meet. Yeah, nice to meet up. Yeah, I'm doing the sprint, which is technically a qualifier for the Worlds in 2022, which is, might be in Townsville, Australia. You never know. So that's my short-term goal. So I'm periodizing opposite that at the moment. Yeah. Biking's going well. Running needs a bit of speed. Hey. Still got time. Still got a bit of time. So last week was an easy week. I've got 2 hard weeks now, and then we start tapering off properly. Yeah. Medium, sort of longer term, I've managed to blag myself an A troop slot for the European middle distance duathlon at Powerman Alsdorf in August, assuming we're allowed to travel and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's medium. And I'm also doing Outlaw X half. Right. In September. It'll be my third 70.3. Quite enjoy it because there's no pace goals where you just sort of go out and do it. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's this season. And really then it's about building for a bit of speed for sprint duathlon in 4 weeks time, and then building the endurance and strength speed for middle distance come the late summer. Sure. And after that, it's just trying to get back in and race back again at sprint and standard duathlons in 2022 and onwards. Yeah, cool. Good. Well, that's a great place to leave it. Have you got anything you want to add, or anything you want to blag or say or whatever? No, not particularly. You've asked me loads of questions. I'm out here. So it's just great. So thanks to you for putting all these podcasts together to get something by way of broad opinion. And
I suppose you get a wide range of people talking about this kind of thing. And so thanks for giving me the opportunity to tell my side of the story. And
no, it's like that's the whole reason that I just come up with the idea, because it gives people like you and me a voice, and inspiring people who haven't got to where we are. And like you said earlier, nobody should be put off to try and do it. So that was the whole reason I've started it, and I love doing it, and I love being able to speak to you guys, over and learning your stories and learning your background. It's just really nice.
Yeah, so the only final thing I'd say, heavily tongue-in-cheek, is if you happen to be in our age group and you happen to be really talented and you're thinking about qualifying for age group, can you wait a couple of years? Give us a chance. No, if you're out there in your age group and you're better than me, go and race and beat me, and you'll have my congratulations.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a great place to finish it. Thank you so much. We'll get this edited, and it'll be out. When will it be out? 2 weeks' time, I think.
Grand.
I just put one.
Super.
Oh yeah, I had the German guy on.
This week.
Stefan last week. So this week we've got this recorded, so it'll be out next week. Yeah, next week.
Good. Well, I'll send you a couple of photos as well. I'll send
brilliant.
you my glory triathlon finish photo, and I'll send you the halo photo.
Brilliant. That will be much appreciated, and we'll get them put out as part of the promo. So that'll be fab.
There we go. We all want to emulate Tim Don, but don't emulate Tim Don in the way I did.
No, not a great way to emulate him, really, was it? But yeah, I mean, on my side, if you can just spread the word to your club members and anybody else that within the multi-sport, just to say that we're here and we're here to help, really, and try and broaden the interest. That would be great. So
we'll do. We've got a very active club social group on Facebook, which a large part of the club participate in, so we put all links on there.
Yeah, brilliant. Fab. Right,
super.
I'll let you go then.
27 days.
We'll see you at the race.
Yeah.
Good luck with your training.
Cheers.
And we'll do what we can do, eh?
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
It's just great. So thanks to you for putting those podcasts together to get something by way of broad opinion, and I suppose you get a wide range of people talking about this kind of thing. And so thanks for giving me the opportunity to tell my side of the story.
Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Really nice to speak to both Dave and Andy. And if you want to get in touch and leave some feedback, you can send us an email at agegroupmultisportpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at amp_1967. You can find us on Facebook at ampgb. You can also find us on YouTube at ampgb, and we're on Twitter at agegroupmultisportpodcast. And finally, if you want to find these podcasts, obviously you found this one, but you can also find all the others at agegroupmultisportpodcast.buzzsprout.com. That's our website. So thank you once again for listening. It'd be fantastic if you could leave a review, if you could rate our podcast, because that helps get us out to more people, and subscribe. And again, leave us a message or drop us an email, and that'd be great to hear from you. That's all from me. And as usual, remember, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.